armadillo or something. Was trying to get at some sparrow eggs. But all of that commotion is just the sparrows flipping through the leaves. There's a herd of sparrows. Tossing through the leaves. Sounded like something was attacking them. Wow, digging. I thought an armadillo, maybe an opossum. Beautiful weather. Something up there. Some kind of woodpecker. That's more sparrows. This is gonna be like 66 in a few days. 66 degrees. It's like shorts weather. Got my nice tripping hazards. My little ankle breakers. Some scraps. Miscellaneous scraps. So this video is sighting part 3, I believe. So it's putting in this box. This is, it's like a steel box, 12 inches wide, I don't know, 16 inches deep, something like that. It's made for going into cathedral ceilings. Part of like a chimney system. Kind of with a cathedral ceiling, you don't want stuff touching your smokestack. So you got this to keep stuff away from the smokestack. So there's going to be a piece of insulated chimney that goes through here. And then it should have like an insulated chimney T, and then from the T it goes up, or clean out at the bottom. For some reason, you want like those insulated are stainless steel, so they don't corrode in the rains. But those doesn't carry a T, an insulated T. So I'm really not too sure exactly what all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have it stick out, and I might order one of those insulated tees online, or do like a web search and see if there's other store in town that sells them. But I doubt that any other store in town sells them. But you never know. I may look for another spot. But it's putting in this box. This box is for the chimney. It's kind of the same deal. Bottom piece of the J channel, and then the side channels kind of flange around it, and then the top flanges over the sides. This box is Vicord to the tar paper. So it's that Vicor. You can't see the Vicor. And then it's kind of the same thing. Bottom and then sides and then top with that Vicor tape. It's that Vicor that does the real seal. And then the Vicor and the tar paper that are being the real seal. And then the metals providing a durable surface, so it doesn't get worn by UVs and stuff. And this has some pressure treated 1x4s, every 2 foot, giving it air gap back there. Windows, when they come in, I'll be adding some more 1x4s. you know, here or there, wherever, you know, a few pieces of 1x4s around the window. So I got something to put some metal on, and kind of building out the metal, you know, about 8 inches, you know, 8-inch piece of metal to the side of each side of the windows. That'll be the final siding video. We'll be putting in those windows, and the other 3 when they come in. So I haven't screwed the, you know, there's a bottom screw. I haven't screwed the bottom screws around here because I gotta put some stuff in there, and it'll just be flop it all up, you know, when I'm doing that. Yeah. Backside. And then, you know, if I do other venting things, they'll be on this side of the beam. Like, there's the beam. They'll be on this side. But for now, this is good. Just this one, you know. So that's this one. Doing the framing, you know, the framings, the plywoods. I think that's all in this video. I can't remember. Framings, plywoods, tar papers, 1x, putting in this box. J-channels, metals for the side.
A warrior for the Word of God and the Constitution of the United States. A Marine Corps veteran. A Harvard-trained attorney. A called churches. And founder and president of STAND. Staying true to America's national destiny. The voice of the awakening. Your host, Bishop E.W. Jackson.
And I am he. You talk about jam-packed news day. And plenty to talk about. Wow, this is it. This is the way to get your money started. Let me tell you, this is not easing down the road off like a rocket. I'm your host here on American Family Radio. This program's called The Awakening. I'm your host, E.W. Jackson. And we're going to get to your calls as soon as we can because I've got to know what you all are thinking about the craziness that is going on in our country right now and the stuff that's in the news. Folks, I've been watching some of the hearings, and I've been watching hearings, the equivalent of communist show trials. A friend of mine calls them, in fact, Jerome Corsi says he calls them Stalinist show trials. Same thing, right? The more I look, the more I realize, you know, that's not just the kind of tongue-in-cheek, sort of, you know, half-funny description. Folks, that's really what they resemble. I mean, it's all one. There's been a big debate just happened in the last few minutes over the Democrats using senators who have come to testify against the president's interests, and then they turn around and put them on the panel to ask questions of witnesses. And I think it was Andy Biggs and a couple of others. Andy Biggs is the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, and Louis Gohmert, and a couple of others who raised the question, wait, how can you be a witness and a questioner? That's out of order. You can be one or the other, but you can't be both. You can't be on the flip over and you become a questioner. You become a prosecutor, in effect. I mean, can you imagine that? Imagine and having a prosecutor take the stand and then turn around and being the prosecutor and asking people questions. Well, that could never happen. That's a violation of the principle of due process, because what it does is blur between evidence and advocacy. See, because of the prosecutor, the questioner, is an advocate. He's trying to make a certain point. A person who's providing objective facts, information, truth. On both sides of the issue, and of course, the chairman is just gabbling everybody down and won't leave a couple of points points of order, but he's very resistant. That's not a point of order. That's not a point of order. Well, you don't know whether it's a point of order until you hear it. So then he finally got into actually hearing the point of order, and when he finally did, he ruled, of course. What would you expect? He ruled against them. And folks, this stuff, it is my earnest prayer, this is going to blow up in the Democrats' faces, and actually Congressman Stetson was another one who raised the question. This is going to blow up in the Democrats' faces on a nuclear level. I'm serious, because look, I look at this and I just think it's just so fundamentally as the smell test. I have to say, Barack Obama, and I refer to Barack Obama because obviously he's the most recent president before President Trump. If it was someone else, I'd be referring to them. But Barack Obama did a lot of things that I did not like. Said a lot of things I did not like. Implemented a lot of policies that I absolutely detested. I didn't think every time the man spoke it was an impeachable offense. Now call me naive for actually being fair, being objective, trying to see things as they are. A president has a right to advocate the policies that he believes are right, and his advocating certain policies is not impeachable. It's not impeachable because I don't like them. He's been given that authority by the American people. My job, if I don't agree with him, is to be the loyal opposition. It's to oppose what he does. It's to stand up against what he's doing. It's to try to convince local officials, congressmen, senators, not to go along with what he's doing. But these folks have gone completely off the deep end. And they think, what do they think? Do they really think the American people would even stand for in throwing President Trump out of office? Because if they do, folks, they're more out of touch with reality than even I imagined. If they really believe that, that's psychotic. That is completely disconnected from reality. 63 million people voted for this president, and they actually think they're going to just stand by and watch a bunch of elitist, leftists decide that they don't like him, they don't like his policies, and they're going to get rid of him. Folks, I don't think that's fair on either side. I don't think that's right on either side. I would not want to see that happening no matter which way it was cutting. Because you know why? And this is where we, those of you who are listening to me, we fundamentally disagree with the people who are leading this impeachment push. We really do care about this country. See, they don't. I'm convinced they don't. I think they care about their own power. But we really do care about this country. And we really want to see things happen in the country and in our laws and in our policies that we think will help all Americans, not some little 0.1% little interest group that is demanding that everybody, deal with them in a certain way. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about policies that are going to affect the broad cross-section of the American people who are getting up every day, going to work, taking care of their families, meeting their responsibilities, trying to be decent neighbors, trying to be decent fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, and just living their lives. And they go out and they vote because they really believe that the country needs to move in a certain direction. And you get a bunch of elites who tell them, well, you're stupid and you're crazy, and we're not going to let you have your way just because you engage in the constitutional and democratic process of actually electing a president. You think that matters to us? Wow. folks, this stuff is, it really is. It's beyond the pale. It really is. And I think the polls are showing right now that they're paying a price for it. And I think that the harder they go at this, the deeper the hole is that they're going to dig. And I'll tell you something. I've never said this on the air before, but I'll say it now. Because, I really don't believe that party is the issue. I don't believe it's that ultimately the issue is Democrat versus Republican. I really believe the issue is good versus evil. I believe the issue is right versus wrong. I believe that it's an issue of principle. And I would rather see a party that has lost its way be decimated, and out of those ashes could come another party that would better reflect the interests of the American people than have a party that's trying to lead us into a kind of abyss of totalitarianism. Back in a moment.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson. Every time Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg enters a hospital, speculation surfaces concerning her health and future. She's a cancer survivor who has occasionally missed oral arguments. But she isn't about to step down because she and other liberals fear who would replace her. But there may be a reasonable solution to how presidents appoint justices to the Supreme Court. Perhaps it is time to consider term limits for the Supreme Court. Even though that sounds controversial, this might actually be a solution that garners bipartisan support. In a recent column, John Fund makes the case for term limits on the Supreme Court. When the Founding Fathers granted life tenure to Supreme Court justices, the average life expectancy was 38. Today it is more than twice that. Some of the justices in the past certainly stayed past their sell-by date. He argues that the Constitution in Article 3, Section 1 does say that judges shall hold their offices during good behavior. It doesn't necessarily mean that they must serve for life. In fact, many federal judges retire on a fairly regular basis. The reform group, Fix the Court, has come up with a bipartisan proposal for 18-year term limits for the Supreme Court. It would stagger the terms so that a vacancy could come up every 2 years. That means every president could have 2 appointments in each term. One poll found that 6 in 10 registered voters favored Supreme Court term limits. Chief Justice John Roberts, appointed by George W. Bush, as well as Justice Stephen Breyer, appointed by Bill Clinton, have indicated support for the idea. This is a proposal worth debating. It will provide a more orderly transition for the Supreme Court and possibly lower the heat in the current confirmation battles. I think this is one proposal that might actually attract bipartisan support. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/antisemitism. Viewpoints.info/antisemitism.
I always thought that alcohol was the answer. I kept on going back to it again and again, and it was never the solution I was looking for. It always led to more drinking, never gave me any security, any answers, just left me wanting more and feeling empty. So I checked out Teen Challenge, and having Christ in my life now, I feel so much more fulfilled, confident, and Christ is my solid anchor.
Hey, I'm Francesca Battistelli. I've seen how destructive drug and alcohol abuse can be, but I also know there is a way out. If you or your loved one is struggling with an addiction, don't give up. Teen Challenge has helped thousands of teens and adults across the country end their addictions through the power of Jesus Christ. You can call them toll-free at 1-855-END-ADDICTION or visit teenchallengeusa.org. You're listening to American Family Radio.
Fisher here. Today we'll compare President Trump and President Obama on immigration. We'll hear from Nancy Pelosi and Gerald Nadler about what they think about politically motivated impeachments. A Democrat compares today's Democrats to Stalin, and if abusing the power of office to dig up dirt on opponents is bad, Democrats are the worst offenders. Next on Point.
To the Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson on American Family Radio.
Okay, I'm going to start taking your calls as soon as I can. The number is 888-589-8840. But yeah, this show trial is absolutely ridiculous. Jerry Nadler is just, he's conducting a Stalinist-like approach to this thing. This is not American democracy. This is not the the constitutional republic that our founding fathers intended in operation here at all. And impeachment is a very, very serious thing. It should only be done under the most grave of circumstances, because you are, in effect, trying to undo the will of the American people. And the American people, frankly, ought to be agreeing with you and saying, you know what, maybe we made a mistake, or we didn't know everything we needed to know, but now that this information is coming out, yes, perhaps there does need to be a change. I think that's what ultimately happened with Richard Nixon. I think the majority of the American people thought he really had to go. I don't know that the majority believed that with Bill Clinton, but I tell you one thing, I think the majority of the American people know that if you or I lied under oath, we'd likely end up. That is a felony. In fact, you can't even lie to the FBI during an investigation. Perjury as well. And you could go to jail for lying to the FBI during an investigation without ever having taken an oath. And Bill Clinton just lied repeatedly under oath. Impeachable, in my view, yes, because the man that you elect to, as the Constitution says, to faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America cannot be found to be one who so disregards those laws that he repeatedly defies them by lying under oath. Now, of course, he wasn't convicted, and he stayed in office, and his popularity, in fact, increased. It really, in the end, didn't hurt him. But I think that there was certainly a reason. I don't find a conversation with a foreign leader, please. Well, at any rate, in addition to that, the Inspector General's report, Harwood's report, is now out. They said I can't find it on the website. He's saying that he believes that the use of the Steele report was not based on any bias, but he's saying that there was misfeasance and malfeasance and an abuse of the FINES process. So I don't have any more details on it than that. I'm giving with one hand, taking away with the other. I don't understand how the use of the Steele dossier by the FBI was not based on bias, because it seems to me that when you get that kind of information, you ought to be asking, where did it come from and what is the motivation? And I'm not law enforcement, but I mean, isn't that kind of basic? Somebody comes to you with a report about someone, and namely in this case, a report on the President of the United States or a candidate for the presidency. You ask, okay, who is this coming from, and what is the motivation? And if you find out that it's financed by the Hillary Clinton campaign, doesn't that give you pause and cause you to say, well, wait a minute, now we better take another look at this information, because this got political bias all over it, based on where it's coming from and the funding. So the fact that those questions weren't asked, to me, is prima facie evidence of bias. But apparently the Inspector General's report, I haven't read the entire report, but apparently he has determined, having looked at all the evidence, that there was no bias in the use of the Steele dossier, and I don't have no political bias in that. I don't buy that in the least. But anyway, let me get to one other thing, folks, and then I'm going to open it up for your questions and comments. You know what? We are facing a Second Amendment crisis in this country, and if these leftists were to take control of Congress and the White House, they would turn many of us into outlaws, because, folks, I am facing, my wife and I are both facing a very, very serious situation. But we're facing a legislature that is about to turn us into outlaws, because weapons that would be outlawed if this governor and this legislature gets their way. A law-abiding citizen, no record, no felony, never committed a crime other than some of the dumb stuff I gave out. Technically, was not law-abiding. But as an adult, never committed a crime. Never. Always sought to respect the law, respect police officers, respect law enforcement, respect the law of the land. I mean, I really do try to live that way, because I think, I really believe that that's part of being a Christian. Part of being a Christian is you have respect for the laws. we're about to be made outlaws. I mean, we're about to, folks, we're about to be made convicted, well, not convicted, but we're about to be made felons based upon property that we owned before this law was passed. And there's nothing about grandfathering anybody in. So basically, if you own an automatic pistol, if it can hold more than 10 rounds, that you will not be, if this governor, this legislature gets their way, you would not be allowed to own that weapon, possess it. It would be outlawed. Possessing it would make you a felon. I mean, can you imagine that? Folks, weapons that are common across this country that law-abiding citizens own. A Beretta 92, 18 rounds. A Glock 19, 15 rounds. And you can just go on and on and on and on down the line with various pistols that are made to hold magazines with more than 10 rounds. And suddenly you're a criminal. And they got a whole list of stuff, folks. A whole list of stuff that they're going to outlaw. Let me just share a few of these with you so you get a sense of, and by the way, counties all over Virginia are declaring themselves sanctuary counties. I think we got 41 counties so far that have declared themselves sanctuary counties. Some of you who are listening to me, Culpeper County, for example, the sheriff of Culpeper County, and we've got a station that broadcasts right in Culpeper County. And as some of you know, the sheriff of Culpeper County has said if they pass such a law, he will deputize people by the thousands. He has no limit to the number of people he can deputize. He said he will deputize people by the thousands so that it's possible for them to possess these firearms without running afoul of the law. But most sheriffs are not going to do that. 41 counties in Virginia have declared themselves sanctuary counties precisely to avoid having their citizens become outlaws. Because that's exactly what they have in mind, turning us all into outlaws. Hey, folks, I'll tell you, when the founding fathers established this nation on the basis of limited government, they knew what they were doing. Wow. They knew what they were doing. Because, as a matter of fact, James Madison said, enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm. You're telling me. You're telling me. And look, and we just had a shooting in Pensacola, and an article in Breitbart. Who wrote this piece? This is a Second Amendment activist who wrote this piece, but wow, this is A.W.R. Hawkins. A.W.R. Hawkins. He wrote this piece basically saying, when are we going to start to realize that putting a sign up on a base saying no guns allowed, the big sign with the cross through the gun, no gun zone, is an invitation to anybody who wants to go in there and kill military people. Folks, sometimes this stuff is just exasperating. And, you can't help but believe that the real agenda here is to disarm the American people because it just doesn't make sense otherwise. It's like a bank putting up a sign saying, no surveillance or locked vaults here. And of course, nobody would do that. You say, well, that'd be stupid. You wouldn't want to do that. But yet you've got these leftists who make us believe, who made a lot of people believe, putting a big sign up on a school, putting a big sign up on some institution, on a military base, no guns here, is somehow some sort of wise, enlightened policy. I tell you, folks, the number is 888-589-8840. I mean, but this stuff is just about as stupid as it gets. And the sad thing is, people lose their lives as a result of this kind of stupidity. Okay, do I have time? Do I have time to get one phone call? And I think I do. Let's go to Joe in Arkansas. Joe, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. I would like to give my honest opinion about this impeachment situation. I know nobody's going to agree with me, and I know this is not going to be done, but here's what I honestly think about this. That's that I think that what the Democrats and the media are doing has gone way beyond any legitimate politicking, and they're involved in insurrection against the legitimate government. And according to the Constitution, the militia is authorized to put down insurrection and repel invasion. And according to the Constitution, also the president is commander-in-chief of the militia.
All right, Joe, I know where you're going. And look, I think you're right about the insurrection part. I guess I'm just not there. I don't think the American people are there yet. I think we can still solve this problem politically. Back in a moment.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Most of us remember reading a short verse of scripture in the book of Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go. I saw a tragedy last Sunday morning. I hope I see it again next Sunday morning. Well, I'd rather see the tragedy I saw than a greater one I fear will eventually occur. I'll call him Johnny. That's not his name, but for our purpose, that's what I'll call him. Johnny's in elementary school. He's in his formative years, and Johnny is the tragedy, or miracle as it may turn out to be. You see, Johnny came to Sunday school and worshiped by himself last week. He's been doing it for some time now. Sometimes Johnny will ride with a neighbor to the church. Sometimes when the weather is good, he'll walk. Sometimes a member of his family will bring Johnny to the church and drop him off. Now what's the tragedy I saw? Just that. Someone in Johnny's family bringing Johnny, dropping him off to go by himself. Johnny's father and mother have something else to do, more important. And so Johnny managed to get to the place that would give him some direction in life all by himself. The story is repeated often in our society. However, I'm afraid it doesn't happen enough, for most Johnnies never manage to get to Sunday school and worship. They simply find more important things to do, like the rest of the family. How long little Johnny will continue to see to it that he gets himself to a place that can give him moral and spiritual instruction and guidance, I don't know. I hope he'll find strength in himself to continue the habit, but I'm afraid that one day Johnny will find it easier to sleep, or one Sunday the family will make some plans that will require Johnny to be away, and that will be followed by another Sunday with some more plans, and another, and another. I guess what I'm really saying is that the pack is stacked against Johnny. The chances of his continuing his present habits are small. The odds against him are too heavy. Johnny will find further down the road that his visits to the house of God will have to cease. The family has other things to do, more important. Johnny is not a poor boy. His family is one of means. They have what most families long for: 2 cars, a fine home, modern conveniences, the whole works. Now, they're not millionaires, but they're well over the poverty line, materially speaking. And that's the tragedy. Johnny's family gives him everything he needs, except what he needs the most. And I guess if you ask them, Johnny's family would say they love him. Certainly there would be an emptiness in their home should Johnny suddenly die. But like I said, Johnny's chances are slim. There's just too much going against him. There's always that slight hope for a miracle, however. So I guess we can hope. But in a few years, if Johnny doesn't make it and he turns out wrong, don't be too hard on him. For as a youngster, he really tried. Oh, incidentally, Johnny is not kin to you, is he?
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Back to the Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson, American Family Radio.
And we're back, folks. Yeah, in the news is this crazy impeachment hearing that Jerry Nadler is presiding over, which is nothing more than a Stalinist show trial, a communist show trial. And the last caller just suggested this is really an insurrection. This is an attempted overthrow. and suggested that the militia in America is the stopgap that the founding fathers allowed in our Constitution for the Second Amendment to put a stop to this stuff. I would not go that far. I believe that we are still, thank God, we are still at the level of political discourse, even though it has gone far beyond anything I've ever seen before. We are still at that level, and I think we can still solve these problems politically, particularly if the left will understand that you can't push but so far without creating chaos in our country. Now, let me just share with you, I'm going to come right to the phones. The number is 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Attorney General Mark Herring, who is the Attorney General of Virginia, released a statement calling the Second Amendment resolutions in these 41 counties in Virginia, quote, nothing more than symbolic. But a Democrat delegate sent a letter to Herring asking for a legal opinion on the matter, and here's what he said. The bills passed by the General Assembly and signed into law by the governor are binding for our entire Commonwealth and its citizens. The legal precedent we would set by allowing communities to selectively ignore those laws at will is alarming and indicative of the same mindset that nearly 150 years ago led this country to dissolve into a civil war. Now, folks, there it is again. That's by Democrat Delegate Jay Jones. And here's what they do not understand. Let me make two comments. Here's what they do not understand. Number one, they don't understand, these leftists don't understand the nature of our country. They really don't. Here's the essential truth that they fail to grasp. Our country is founded on the principle that certain essential, called fundamental, rights, liberties, freedom, come from God. They don't come from government. And short of a person committing a crime and having his or her freedom or property taken away by appropriate due process, it means a jury of your peers finds you guilty and you are then punished with either with the confiscation of property or the confiscation of your freedom or property. The government doesn't have any right to take our stuff away. The legislature can't sit in the General Assembly of Virginia and pass laws to confiscate our property or pass laws that make ownership of certain firearms willy-nilly illegal, converting every citizen who owns such firearms into a convicted felon. I keep saying convicted, but that's where they want to take it. Ultimately, they would convict you once the law is passed. They catch you with it, then put you on trial and convict you. And suddenly, a law-abiding citizen who's never done anything to anybody, never robbed anybody, never hurt anybody, never sought to threaten anybody with a firearm, suddenly that person's in jail for having done what the Constitution said was an essential human right, which is to keep and to bear arms. So, folks, I don't think these leftists understand that what's got people all riled up, and there's a city council hearing in the city of Chesapeake, Virginia tomorrow. I've been told there may be 1,000 people showing up to this thing. They won't be able to see them all. And I'm planning to go. Because I don't live in Chesapeake, by the way, but used to, but I don't anymore. But folks, this stuff, this is out of control. This is out of control. I've been asked to speak actually at it, so I'm going to show up and certainly let my sentiment be known. This is completely out of control. We are a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And what that means is, here again, this is what leftists don't understand. This is what I don't think most Democrats understand. You cannot willy-nilly vote away fundamental human rights that are given to us by God and simply secured, not given to us, but secured by the Constitution. Our Second Amendment rights are not given to us by the Constitution. They are secured by the Constitution. In other words, government is duty-bound to recognize this God-given human right, to respect it. And these leftists don't understand that. It's because, well, first of all, most of them have rejected God. So how can your rights come from a God that doesn't exist, right? So that means they rejected the Declaration, and they rejected the fundamental rights upon which this nation was built. We are a free people, and we're not free because the government made us free. We're free because God created us free, and we've created a government that is intended to protect and defend that liberty, not take it away. And I'll tell you, folks, you in effect prosecute and persecute the president without due process of law. You trump up charges, forgive the pun. You trump up charges about some kind of Russian collusion, call the man a traitor, call him treasonous, call him a Russian asset, and then there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. In fact, all the evidence points in the opposite direction, that he did no such thing. He did not collude with Russia, conspire with Russia, do Russia's bidding, none of that. But for 2 years, you called the man all these names, and you basically said he was an illegitimate president. That's what they said. He's an illegitimate president. And now they're moving with all deliberate speed, particularly here in Virginia, and they'll do this on the federal level too, to take away our Second Amendment rights. You all know they're after your First Amendment rights, because that's what hate speech is all about. Hate speech means this: you can't say anything the left hates. That's what it means. That's all it means. Because other than that, it's a meaningless term. Freedom of speech means you have the right to say things that people may not like, that people don't want to hear, that may be offensive. That's the nature of freedom. And the way you deal with that is you bring forth better speech. You make a better argument. You make a better case. You try to convince people that the way you view life is right and the way others are viewing it is wrong. And the American people, who are the sovereigns of this nation, not these politicians, but the American people who are the sovereigns of this nation, we decide. Can you imagine Nancy Pelosi saying it's dangerous to wait until the election? Boy, I tell you, that's you could take that right out of Stalin, Lenin's, Hitler's, Mao Zedong's playbook. That's what we're up against, folks. And you know what? We're going to win because we're going to fight the good fight of faith. Oh, and by the way, let me say one other thing. I can't not say this, folks. I've had the opportunity to go to many, many gun shows. And I've spoken to some of them because sometimes I would go to a gun show, I'm running, and they'll give a candidate an opportunity to speak to the gun show. You know, people are milling around, but you get an opportunity to be heard across the gun show. I can't tell you how many times I would go to gun shows and talk to people, talk to Second Amendment supporters who would tell me, oh, I don't vote. I don't vote. Folks, if you care about the First Amendment, if you care about the Second Amendment, if you care about the Constitution of the United States, if you care about your liberty, it's time for us to get off that. That's got to... You've got to vote with a vengeance now. You've got to vote like your life depended on it. You know what? It's coming down to a point where it does. So I'll say that. Because I would shake my head. Of course, I would engage in a little debate and say, well, what? You don't vote? Nah, I can't be bothered with that. What? I said, do you realize that there are politicians who want to take away your right to be here and your right to buy a weapon here and your right to own firearms? Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, they think, well, if they ever come to get my weapons, we're going to shoot it out. But it doesn't have to come to that, folks. We can shoot it out at the ballot box with votes. And that's what we better do. 888-589-8830. Let's go to, oh, wow, you've been very patient. Jerome in North Carolina. Jerome, welcome.
Yes, sir. I just want to say one thing. I agree with you 100%, sir. I'm 79 years old, and I'm seeing from time that the prayer was taken out of school to the courthouses and to the Supreme Court places, this country is going socialism just as hard as it can. And it breaks my heart that people are asleep and not really aware of the
Well, Jerome, they're more aware now that you've just spoken. Back in a moment.
It's spending time with them one-on-one and, asking questions on a regular basis on the bad days and the good days about what are your interests and what are your passions.
Do you know your children? This is Focus on the Family Minute, and Dr. Kathy Cook offers a few ways to start to really get to know them.
And even taking notes and having any kids saying, why did you write that down, Mom? Well, because I want to remember that you're interested right now in that. So if I run across an idea related to that as I'm out and about, I want to capture that idea for you so we can talk about it more. I love knowing that about you. So I think it's good questions. And it's also letting them ask us questions. So it's not an interrogation, but it's the family dynamic. Do we know each other? And Dad, when you were my age, what did you like doing in your spare time? And are we available to their questions so that they also get to know us?
Be intentional about getting to know your child. More encouragement from Dr. Kathy at FamilyMinute.org.
Target is in the bullseye because of its transgender bathroom policy.
Petition by the American Family Association to boycott Target now surpassing 1 million signatures and counting.
People have their own beliefs and stuff, but what can it hurt? What can it hurt? What can it hurt?
It hurts our daughters.
It hurts you. It hurts our families.
It hurts me.
It hurts
all of us.
Sign the petition to boycott Target at afa.net.
So they asked me to enter my email address. And the next thing I know, I start getting emails from companies I never even knew existed. What's up with that?
Here at the American Family Association, you have our word that we won't give away, sell, or lease your email address to any other organization or company. We're thankful when you take the time to subscribe to AFA Action Alerts, 1 Million Moms, Engage Magazine, or any of our other online newsletters.
The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Such comfort. And yet, can you imagine having never read those words for yourself? Hi, it's Michael Woolworth with Bible League International, and we've been engaging the world with God's Word for more than 80 years for $5 a Bible. There are Christians in Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East who've never held a Bible in their own hands because of corrupt governments that oppress, majority religions that persecute, and other conditions related to living remotely and in extreme poverty. Some of these new believers, they memorize long stretches of Scripture, while others cherish the Word they heard preached on Sunday until they can gather again. They long for God's Word to hold in their hands and to cherish in their hearts as they grow in His grace and knowledge. Details on how you can be involved are at sendbiblesnow.com. That's sendbiblesnow.com, or by calling Bible League at 800-YES-WORD, 800-YES-WORD.
Back to the Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson on American Family Radio.
And folks, it is chilling when you see corruption within the FBI, which has always been an admired law enforcement agency, and I still think most FBI agents are honest, decent people doing their job. But when these elites get in there, these leftists get in there, and they think it's their job to twist our institutions to get their agenda done. The FISA courts were established to deal with espionage. They weren't established to deal with trying to subvert a candidate that you don't like by gaining surveillance over them through an unlawfully obtained means by basically using a bogus report and, in my view, lying about its origin because they didn't offer where it came from. And to me, that was a lie because there were people who knew that that thing was a piece of trash that was conjured up by Hillary Clinton. But they just bowed along with it. So folks, this stuff is chilling when our own institutions that we've trusted, the CIA. Well, John Brennan, a former admitted communist who voted for communists the first time he voted, and as a far leftist, we know he's a far leftist. To me, he further corrupted the CIA. And you remember when the left used to hate the CIA? It's now they're defending the CIA. That ought to tell you something. It tells you what they feel is they've got enough moles in the CIA now, enough leftist, socialist, Marxist, communists in the CIA now, that they can now support the CIA because the CIA will do their bidding now. I hope they're wrong about that, but all of this stuff, folks, is just if I didn't have faith in God, I would be profoundly discouraged about my country. But I do have faith in God, and I believe that the God who gave us the United States of America is not going to let a bunch of atheists and secularists and Marxists and socialists take this country down. This America is going to remain the land of the free and the home of the brave, and you and I are going to do everything in our power as long as there's breath in our body to see to it that that's the case. And I'm talking about peaceful means, folks. Stuff gets, the rhetoric gets so heated that I just want to make clear. I'm talking about peaceful means. All right, let's go back to the lines. You've been very patient. Sherry from North Carolina. Sherry, welcome.
Hey, Bishop. I want to make a few comments about the bachelor governor in Virginia. Personally, I think the man is a loon. That's putting it mildly. As for what they're trying to do to you guys in Virginia, I'm sure that it will come south. We too have a Democratic governor here. I'm a almost 70-year-old woman, and believe you me, my family are gun owners. We are law abiders, lovers of this nation, Christians, and God gave me the common sense to know to protect myself. I trust Him, number one, but He gave me the ability and the common sense to know to protect myself. I love our law enforcement, but believe you me, by the time they get here, it's usually all over, whichever way it goes.
Yep.
And, sir, I'll be praying for you tomorrow and for your state. I've been keeping up with it, and I listen to you frequently, and God bless you, sir. Thank you for being there.
God bless you, too. And I really appreciate that, because here again, this you just heard a profile of most gun owners. Now, Sherry's obviously a woman, but most gun owners, Christians, law-abiding people, love our country, not interested in hurting anybody, but understanding that we have a God-given right to defend ourselves and our property against those who would come and do harm to us. Why, here again, that's what makes me think that what the left is really up to is disarming the American populace for their own purposes, because common sense tells you it doesn't make any sense. Since criminals will always get the guns, it doesn't make any sense to disarm the law-abiding citizens and stop them from being able to defend themselves against the people who would do them harm. So what's the real agenda? I don't think the real agenda is saving Americans, because I don't see anything in their agenda in any other aspect that is about looking out for the American people. If some American is killed at the hands of an illegal immigrant, they don't want to talk about that. They have no interest in that. So they're not interested in saving the American people. They're interested in advancing their power, and disarming the American people, I think, is part of that agenda. If I'm wrong, I'd invite any leftist to come tell me differently, but I don't see anything else that makes any sense to me. Okay, let's go to Virginia. Let's go to Lee in Virginia. Lee, welcome. Lee, you're on. I can't really hear you, Lee. Are you?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
There you go. I can hear you now.
I'd just like to say there has never been in recorded history that I know of a gun that has killed anybody by themselves. They want to put the laws toward the guns and not toward the people that's holding the trigger. And I am almost 70 years old. In 1969, I was drafted by this government. This government forced me to take an oath and to swear that I would protect and defend this Constitution. Not the Democrats, not the Republicans, not even the American flag, the Constitution, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, my understanding is if you want to change this Constitution, it's supposed to be put up and 2/3 of the states have to vote to change it, not somebody in Washington change it.
Well, look, Lee, you're absolutely right. And look, the state where that crafted and designed more than any other, though, that Bill of Rights, George Mason, James Madison, who argued about the importance of a Bill of Rights. And as you all know, James Madison didn't even want to vote for the Constitution until he was guaranteed that there would be a Bill of Rights, because he wanted some enumerated rights that were sacrosanct, that were sacred. And the First and Second Amendment are first and second for a reason. And yet we've got people who want to keep away at it until they're basically non-existent. That's really what we want to do. You're right. Because every time the left goes to the people, they lose. Every time they try to implement some stupid policy and get the American people to go along with it, they lose. And so what they have to do is use judicial fiat, judicial tyranny, use the elites who've gotten control of the legislature, as is the case in Virginia, just ram what they want to do down the throats of their citizens, whether we like it or not. Well, that's the way Marxists always do it, because they think that people aren't smart enough to know what's best, and it takes elites like them to tell us. So, folks, okay, let's keep taking your calls. Let's go to Cynthia in Texas. Cynthia, welcome.
Hi, how are you today? Well, I have a statement, I guess, that it seems to me like the left has gone so far left that they are unreasonable, and you can't reason with them. So how can we hope to have any kind of a reconciliation between the two when one basically is light and the other is dark? Because I really truly believe they are rejecting everything of God and his morals and principles that our country is founded on. Light and dark cannot mix. And I, for one, agree with the people that have talked previously that these people should be brought to justice and they should be tried and they should just be stopped. I can't see anything changing or getting better.
Well, you're right, Cynthia. Except we can't. I mean, you're right in the sense that I don't see any possibility of reconciliation with people whose views are so divergent that there's no room really for compromise. If one group says, well, we believe that our rights are God-given, and the other group says, no, we'll tell you what your rights are, where's the compromise there? There is none. The matter's already settled. It was settled in the Constitution, settled when our fathers formed the country. And the thing is, others who've now taken a different view have got to be brought back into line. All I'm saying is, we're not going to do that by violence. We're going to do that by the rule of law. We're going to do that by voting. I mean, I would say the first thing, if you want to talk about violence, the first thing, every Christian, every Second Amendment supporter, every law-abiding citizen in this country, every citizen who believes that these people have gone off the deep end, you ought to get violent about voting. You ought to get violent about voting. You ought to be so committed. Mama, daddy, sister, brother, friend, neighbor, cousin, aunt, uncle, colleague at work, everybody ought to be telling everybody who cares about these issues, you ought to get violent about voting. You ought to get violent about, I don't care if it takes my life, I am going to the voting booth and I'm going to vote my values. That's the fight that we've got right now. Look, folks, I'll tell you something. I believe that if every Second Amendment supporter in Virginia and every Christian in Virginia had voted in the last election, then conservatives would not have lost the legislature. And if we did that in statewide elections, we wouldn't lose the governor, the attorney general, anything else. When I campaigned, I ran across Christians who were actively engaged in ministry in their church who would tell me, like these Second Amendment people, well, I don't know, I don't vote, I don't get involved in that. And I'm saying, do you realize your rights are at stake because there are people who believe that they gave you the rights and they can take them away rather than God gave them to you? So, folks, to me, that's where the energy and the effort needs to be put. Okay, let's try to get these. Wow, you've really been patient too. Tommy in Ohio. Tommy, welcome.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? I just wanted to say that we should remind every one of them politicians up there trying to kick Trump out of office that ignorance of the truth is no excuse. That's one of the first bits of wisdom I picked up when I was a kid listening to my grandpa. And these Democrats had a lot to answer for, and I'll let you go. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Well, Tommy, I appreciate the call. God bless you all. And look, keep praying. There is an answer, by the way. One of our callers said, I don't see any way out. There is another way, in addition to voting and getting engaged, believing God for an awakening. And I really do believe there will be a third great awakening in the United States of America. I believe it with all my heart. So I want you to believe it with me, because it's going to take God's intervention to clear this mess up. And so in the meantime, that's why I say we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.